We stamp our feet in the entrance, shaking the snow off our boots. My wife and I were able to deliver everything we bought to the house in one go. I dropped my bags and took off my shoes. My wife bent over, taking off her boots, and her butt looked so damn good in the leggings she was wearing. I approached her from behind and began to take her without expecting consent. "Corey, what are you doing?" she managed to shout out. I just growled. It had been 2 weeks since we last had sex, and I was horny. The kids won't be here for another 2 hours, and these leggings have been teasing me all morning. I was rude, forcing me to do everything I wanted. Then I collapsed on her, lay there for a second, then stood up. She turned around and stared at me with a lustful gaze. I gave her my hand and she rose to her feet. This was the moment of truth. How pissed is she? She came over, grabbed my head, and pulled me down to kiss me almost angrily. She giggled and broke our kiss. "No more? I need to get myself in order." "Damn, Corwin, your acting really shook my world." "You have to say what caused this?" she exclaimed. She pulled on her leggings and walked downstairs, slightly hesitantly, into the bathroom. She still had one shoe on. I pulled on my jeans and took a breath. I took the groceries and took them to the kitchen. After taking them apart, I started brewing coffee, and when everything was ready, I grabbed 2 coffee cups and waited for the coffee to fill them. I felt 2 arms wrap around me as Gina hugged me tightly. I poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to her. We both like it black, so there was no need to add sugar or cream. I sat down on a chair at the table, and she surprised me by jumping into my lap. I hugged her and buried my face in her tousled blonde hair. We hugged for a few seconds. Then she pulled away to look into my eyes. "So, what is all this for?" "I'm not complaining. I just want to know what I need to do to make this happen more often." "Well, we had a couple of weeks off, and you've been teasing me all morning with those leggings. When I saw you bend over to take off your shoes, I couldn't help myself. I thought it would be easier to ask for forgiveness later than to ask permission now." "Well, when you turned it on, I thought everything was fine," I replied. "More than good. I forgot how nice it can be when someone takes you without permission. Don't get me wrong, I love those nights when you make me squirm for hours, but damn if it isn't fun to just let yourself go and have sex," she answered. I pressed her tightly to me. "Is it possible to find out why everything took so long? We haven't gone this long without at least short sex, since the twins were babies," I asked. "Oh no, at least I don't know," she replied. "I had some thoughts, but I don't think they influenced us." "So this has nothing to do with Taylor Jenkins getting his job back?" I asked. She blushed rapidly. "Gotcha. Let's see what she says. Actually, it has something to do with it. He came back a little over a month ago, and I can't get him out of my head," she said quietly. "Okay, let's talk about it," I replied as kindly as I could. "How did I find out one of my wife's old boyfriends was back in town?" She told me herself. "We were having lunch, and the twins were stuffing their mouths as usual. Do you have any idea how much 2 boys can eat?" We were talking about her work, and she mentioned that Taylor Jenkins was hired at her Baltimore branch and then transferred to the Detroit office. I took this into account, but did not understand what was objectionable about her mention, although I decided to pay a little more attention. Honestly, what I remember about Taylor is that he was a pretty nice guy. I knew my wife dated him in college, and my then-girlfriend and I would occasionally run into Gina and Taylor at a bar or club. Gina and I had been local since we were kids and went to high school together, so we knew each other. It wasn't until my senior year of college that we finally got together. Then we moved in together, got jobs, had boys, bought our house, and were your typical suburban couple with enough money to maybe go to Pizza Hut at the end of the week. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. Life was good. While she collected her thoughts, I tried to formulate my plan of attack. I didn't think she cheated on me. Hell, as far as I can tell, they didn't even have lunch together. No, I just felt tried to understand this. I don't have any feelings for him, but if that's the case, why can't I get him out of my head? What about you? You are the best guy, despite your love for Patriots. So why am I thinking about other things when I have you?" she asked. I thought about it for a second. "I'll ask you a question, and know that the truth won't make me angry." "Fine," I answered. She nodded. Wasn't he the best sex partner you've ever had? I asked. The question hung in the air for a good minute. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She blushed again, after which I received an answer. Until we got along, yes, I was, she said almost defiantly. Apparently, I touched a nerve. Next, I was going to proceed carefully. Thank you for the truth, but I'm not angry at all. We never talked about numbers, but if you had sex with 10 guys before we got together, I would only have a 1 in 11 chance of being your best ever. I know this is not the best chance, I answered with a chuckle. She stood up from my lap and looked at me. How can you laugh at this? Why aren't you jealous? She demanded. Because I'd like to think there's more to our relationship than just sex. If it was just him, I'd be worried. However, we still have friendships, partnerships that include finances and children, and much more. Darling, I am sure that you love me and want to be with me. I just want to make sure it stays that way, I said with a smile. I had to think about it quite quickly, but I couldn't remember who my best lover was. I remembered the magical Jane Stenson with quite fondness. The main problem was that there were 2 other guys who would remember it at the same time that we were hanging out with her. That was one of the reasons I wasn't too jealous. I knew I loved my wife and didn't want to cheat on her, even though she wasn't the best lover I've ever had. So my wife probably loved me back and didn't want to cheat on me. So, what should I do? It's not that I'm lusting after this guy, it's just that these thoughts pop up in my head and I get a little horny, she asked, sitting on my knee again. And then it dawned on me. I found that thoughts about Jane appeared in my head from time to time. Or maybe you just remember only good moments? Remember when I left ABC Warehouse and how miserable I was? I asked. She nodded. Do you remember a couple of years later, when my current job was hard? How I was thinking about going back, and you said that I only remember the good times? I continued. She nodded again. My God, you were so miserable. No salary was worth it. She remembered. So you're probably doing the same thing. You are no longer together. Why did you break up? I asked. When we were together, he was a jerk, she replied. He never gave a tip when we left. He said that the owner should pay his workers a decent wage. I think he was just a cheapskate. He had a terrible habit of belching as loudly as he could every chance he got. He thought it was funny. If he had a couple of days off, it was okay for him to wear the same clothes all day and not shower unless you forced him to. Well, I'm also guilty of the latter. Wow, you're right. Now that I think about it, he was kind of an ass, she said thoughtfully. What you need to do is remember all this when it pops into your head. After a while, I doubt it will influence you, I replied. This brought me another kiss. I love you so much, she exclaimed. I love you too, baby, I said before kissing her again. Can I ask a question? What did he do that made you feel so good? Can I try it too? She blushed and pointed to the sofa. He did this. I never knew at what point they would throw me on the sofa, bed, or floor and just start pounding me. For the most part, it was great. But we never had the slow love that I enjoy with you, she said. I laughed out loud. Darling, you can't even imagine how simple this is for me. I can do this as often as you want. I always thought it was a little selfish to just not expect consent to have a girl. But if that turns you on, I'm totally up for it. She gave me a lustful look. Now that the girl has been shown her place in detail, what else are you going to do with her? She asked hoarsely. I think it's time for this girl to show how obedient she will be, I said, forcing her to her knees. She immediately understood what I was talking about and got down to business. All thoughts of past lovers, hers or mine, evaporated. The Taylor Jenkins saga didn't end there. It turns out that he was heavily flirting with all the women at his new job. Gina said that he approached her a couple of times, offering to meet and remember old times. The first few times, she simply turned him down. Then she told him that the only way to go to dinner with him was to introduce him to her big, scary husband, who was insanely jealous. He backed down but tried to make life difficult for her at work. Finally, she got tired of it and went to the HR department. She got an appointment for today. I expected her to come home all emotional, so I sent the kids to their parents and prepared dinner for her, but I didn't expect a call from the hospital. "Hello, is this Corwin Jones?" asked the voice on the other end. "Yes, what happened?" I asked. "Mr. Jones, you need to come to Detroit Mercy Hospital. We have your wife in the emergency room and we need you to pick her up. I can't give details over the phone. We will tell you everything when you come here." The voice answered. As I ran after her, my mind was racing in a million different directions. The bastard hit her? If he touches her with even one finger, I will tear out his spleen through his nose. I rushed to the emergency room and quickly found the room where Gina was lying. There was some elderly policeman there dealing with her, and she had a cast on her wrist. As I entered, the policeman looked up and walked towards me, chuckling. "Don't worry, son, she's fine. One of her colleagues got a little loose with her, and she stood up for herself. Let the doctor tell you the details, but in short, she broke her wrist when she hit the villain. You are a real woman. Anyway, if I were you, I'd press charges against the guy. It might give you leverage in case a civil suit comes along. But I'm just an old cop speaking his mind," he said. He patted me on the shoulder and left. I walked over and hugged her. "What happened, baby?" I asked. When I left the HR department, Taylor was already waiting for me. I went to the exit, but he grabbed my hand. I was angry and scared, so I kicked him in the shin as hard as I could and then hit him between the legs with my knee. And when he didn't fall, I hit him in the face. At that moment, I felt my wrist crack, and then it hurt terribly. "They gave me painkillers and didn't allow me to go home," she said. I saw that she was a little out of her mind, either from the pills or from the ordeal, but I discharged her, and we drove home quite calmly. I put her in a hot bath and asked Mom and Dad to leave the boys overnight. I put my beautiful maiden in bed, snuggled next to her, and we fell into a happy sleep. Taylor was fired. His attitude towards women at work was unkind. He would have been fired before the Me Too movement began. Now everything happened faster. He tried to file a civil suit against us, but it came to nothing. There were many witnesses who saw him grab her arm and call her names. We decided that our twins should go to school, and when the boys left for college, we got some financial relief and paid off the mortgage on our house. Our sex life has improved over the years. Gina was going crazy being forced to stay home while her wrist was in a cast. Her company was scared to death, so they paid her not to work until the cast came off. We finished another lovemaking session, but then she did something. I was in shock and frenzy. I learned about it on the internet and trained. "Let Jane Stenson die of envy," she whispered in my ear. God, how I love this woman. How did Gina find out about Jane Stenson, you might ask? Honestly, I don't know, but when my wife really wants to know something, who can stop her? Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.